Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe and turn on notifications. He started his story by painting a picture. A life he had meticulously built. A life of stability and routine. He spoke of the house in Crestwood. The steady rhythm of their days. All of it, anchored by his tireless work at the financial firm. In his telling, he was the architect of their world. And Leah was its primary resident. He remembered her as she was when they married. Leah. Just 25 then. With a laugh that could fill a room, and a way of looking at him that made him feel like the only man in the world. But that was before. Before motherhood changed the landscape of their lives. Every morning, it was the same, his voice explained, flat and measured. Leah would wake at 6. The alarm would go off, a soft chime she'd set, and she'd silence it before it could wake Sophie. Another day would begin. It was a routine. A good one. Coffee for her. A bottle for the baby. Diapers. The day would unfold from there. Cartoons. The playground. Lunch. A nap. He listed these things not as chores, but as placid, predictable markers of a comfortable life. A life he provided. He never mentioned the screaming tantrums, the endless cycle of laundry, or the bone-deep exhaustion of being on call, 24 hours a day, for a tiny, demanding human. In his memory, Leah's days were a gentle, flowing current. His own days were different. He described them with a quiet, weary pride. The early departures. The long commutes. The high-stakes pressure of managing client portfolios. He was a gladiator in a suit, heading out into the arena every day to win bread for his family. I'd get home late, he continued, a note of defensiveness in his tone. 8, sometimes 9 o'clock. I was drained. But I still tried. I always tried to help. This was a critical part of his narrative. A recurring theme of his unrecognized efforts. I'd make a point of it, he said, his voice lowering. I'd see a few dishes in the sink. And I'd wash them. I'd see a basket of clean laundry, and I'd fold it. Small things. I know. But I was trying to show her I was there. That I was a partner. But there was something about those gestures. They never landed. She'd watch me, sometimes, with this look on her face. Not gratitude. Just a cold sort of observation. He paused, letting the injustice of it hang in the air. I'd finish folding the last of Sophie's little shirts. Place them in a neat pile. And I'd just stand there for a second. Waiting. I was waiting for something. A thank you, honey. A smile. Anything. But I rarely got it. It was like I was performing for an audience of one. An audience that had already decided the show was a failure. The truth, which his memory conveniently omitted, was that while he washed 3 plates from his own late dinner, Leah had already washed 15 throughout the day. His contributions were the epilogue to her epic poem of domestic labor. But in his story, they were the main event. I tried to thank her, of course, he added quickly. I'd say, thanks for dinner. Or, the house looks great. But it felt like throwing a pebble into a canyon. Just silence. It was after our daughter was born that she changed. The vibrant, happy woman I married was replaced by someone who was perpetually tired. Perpetually disappointed in me. I was working 60-hour weeks to keep a roof over our heads. A nice roof, and all I got in return was that look. That look that said, "You're not doing enough." That's when I first felt it. A crack, thin as a hairline, running through the foundation of everything I was working for. The first major fracture, according to Daniel, was not caused by his long hours. It was an external force. An invasion. It came in the form of Leah's friends. She had these 2 friends from college, he began, his voice taking on a harder edge. Chloe and Megan. Always a bit chaotic, those 2. I never said anything, of course. They were her friends. He recounted the incident with the precision of a prosecutor. One day, I'm in the middle of a quarterly review. My phone buzzes. It's a text from Leah. It said, and I remember it exactly. The girls are going to stay here for a while. Not, can my friends stay? Not, what do you think about this? Just a declaration. A decree. He felt the indignation, even now. My first thought was, for how long? But it was the principle of it. This was my house too. The sanctuary I came home to, after a brutal day. And just like that, it was going to be a halfway house for her friends. When he got home that night, the house felt alien. Luggage in the hallway. Chloe and Megan at the kitchen table. Drinking wine with Leah. They greeted him with bright, forced smiles. He remembered nodding, forcing a smile of his own, and feeling like an intruder. I was polite, he insisted. I asked how they were. I ate dinner in near silence. And then I went to our bedroom. What else was I supposed to do? I chose the mature path. I avoided a confrontation. For the next 5 weeks, Daniel's mature path was a heavy, suffocating silence. He'd come home, eat quickly, and retreat. He never complained out loud, but the atmosphere grew thick with his resentment. He saw the hurt in Leah's eyes, but he interpreted it as an accusation. You're being difficult. He saw it as her fault. You did this without asking. When they finally left, he felt a profound relief. But 6 months later, the situation was reversed. Daniel's younger sister, Rachel, was in trouble. She called me one night, in tears, he said, his tone softening. Her landlord had sold the building. She was being evicted. She had nowhere to go. He hung up the phone, his mind made up. He looked at Leah. Rachel's going to stay here for a while, he announced. He recalled Leah's reaction with a sense of bewilderment. Her face just hardened. She put down a plate and said, "Are you asking me, or telling me?" I couldn't believe it. I said, "She's my sister, Leah. She needs help." And then she threw my words back in my face. And my friends needed help, too, but you sulked for the entire 5 weeks they were here. He recounted the argument that followed, framing himself as the voice of reason. I tried to explain. That's different. Rachel is family. But she wouldn't hear it. She started shouting about double standards. How could she even compare them? Her friends versus my own blood? It was absurd. Rachel ended up staying. Leah swallowed her anger. But as Daniel noted, something broke that day. She looked at me differently. But she was the one being hypocritical. Not me. Family is supposed to come first. I thought that was a rule everyone understood. After that, the distance widened. Daniel poured himself deeper into his work. It was a refuge. A place where his efforts were rewarded with promotions, not silent disappointment. The hours got longer, he admitted, but framed it as a necessity. Tax season was brutal. A huge merger was on the line. I was essential. I explained it to her. This wasn't for me, it was for us. For Sophie's future. His explanations were delivered via text message. Sent at 9 p.m. While Leah was alone. When he finally did get home, he was a ghost. Scrolling through his phone while she tried to tell him about her day, replying in monosyllables. His mind, still crunching numbers. The explosion came one Tuesday night. He was on the couch, phone in hand. She snapped. "You're here, but you might as well be miles away." Daniel remembered looking up, genuinely surprised. "I work all day to support this house, Leah." "And me?" She shot back, her voice trembling. "What do you think I do? Sit here with my arms crossed?" "I never said that. You act like taking care of our daughter is a vacation. Like I'm just relaxing while you're out there being important." The fight spiraled. Old grievances. Old wounds. He insisted he was doing his best. She shouted that the future was worthless if he wasn't present for the now. And then, in the heat of her frustration, she unleashed the weapon. "Do you want a divorce?" Daniel recounted the moment with a chilling clarity. The word just hung there. Divorce. It was so final. I froze. The silence afterward was deafening. I just stared at her. I'd never once considered it. "Oti, if you're so unhappy," she'd pressed on, "if I'm such a burden, maybe we should just split up." "Leah, I never said I wanted to separate," he'd stammered. "Then change," she'd cried, "stop treating me like I'm invisible." That word, divorce, became her trump card. He was terrified of it. The thought of losing Sophie, of dismantling the life he'd built, was unbearable. So he backed down. He promised to change. And I tried, he said earnestly. For a week or two. I really did. I left the office at 6:30. I was home for dinner. But the world doesn't stop. A major project flared up. A deadline was moved. The late nights started again, not because I wanted them to, but because they had to. And as soon as he slipped, Leah reached for the same weapon. Do you want a divorce? It became a cycle, Daniel explained, his voice low. Every time we fought, she'd ask that question. And every time, I'd back down. I'd apologize, make concessions. I knew she didn't really mean it. It was a tool. A way to shake me, to get my attention. But the thing about sharp tools is that they cut. The more she used that word, the more it hollowed out what we had. I started to feel like I was living with a captor, who held an axe over my head at all times. The slightest mistake, and down it would come. Despite the toxic cycle, there were moments of hope. After a particularly bad fight, he suggested therapy. She agreed. I went in with an open mind, he stated. I was ready to do the work. The therapist, Dr. Evans. She was blunt. She told me I used work to hide. She told Leah she used threats because she was afraid. We both sat there, and took it. For a few months, things genuinely seemed to improve. They found a fragile balance. Then came Sophie's 4th birthday. This was the event Daniel marked as the point of no return. Leah had planned a small party, he recalled. Balloons, a cake. On a Saturday. I had it marked in my calendar. I was looking forward to it. 3 days before the party, his boss called him in. He scheduled a mandatory client dinner for that Saturday night, Daniel explained, his tone laced with stress. This wasn't just any client. This was the Henderson account. The biggest deal our firm had landed in a decade. My presence was essential. It could mean a promotion. A big one. He went home that night with a knot in his stomach. He broke the news as gently as he could. He described her reaction as an explosion. She just turned off the stove and stared at me. Her face was pure ice. Saturday is Sophie's birthday, Daniel. I know, he'd pleaded, but this is huge. This is for us. For Sophie. He recounted her bitter laugh. More stability? We need you, Daniel. Your daughter needs you. She only turns 4 once, and you're trading it for a work dinner. I'll make it up to her. We'll do something special on Sunday. Make it up? She'll just see that her daddy chose work over her. The argument was brutal. He insisted it was out of his control. She accused him of always having an excuse. And then, she said the words. The words that were far worse than the threat of divorce. She looked him dead in the eye. And she said, I regret marrying you. He paused the recording. The silence was heavy with the weight of that sentence. Divorce, that was a threat. A tool. But this was different. This was an erasure of our entire history. Of Sophie. Of everything. It wasn't just an insult. It was a judgment. A final verdict on my life. On my worth. It broke something inside me that therapy could never fix. He grabbed his car keys and left. He couldn't breathe. I showed up at the party on Saturday, he said quietly. I came late. I smiled for the pictures. I stayed for an hour. But I couldn't look at her. I couldn't stay there, pretending we were a happy family. Not after she had gutted me like that. I needed space. I needed to get away from the woman who regretted my very existence. Daniel spent the next few weeks at his sister's house. He described himself as being in a state of emotional shock. He continued his therapy sessions. Alone. Dr. Evans listened. He said. She urged me not to make any rash decisions. She convinced me to try talking to Leah one more time. To go to her without warning, to try and have a real, raw conversation. It was a Thursday night. Filled with a reluctant, fragile hope, he decided to do it. He drove to their house first. But her car was gone. He felt a pang of disappointment. Then a strange, uneasy feeling settled in his stomach. He decided to wait down the street. 15 minutes later, he saw her car pull out of the driveway. He justified what he did next. It wasn't suspicion, he insisted. It was a gut feeling, a concern. She was supposed to be working, but she was driving toward the downtown lofts. I just wanted to make sure she was okay. So I followed her. He kept a safe distance, his heart pounding with a nameless dread. She parked in front of a renovated warehouse building. She got out and went inside. Daniel sat in his car. The concern had curdled into a dark, sickening certainty. This wasn't a work errand. This wasn't a friend's place. This was something else. Dr. Evans had told me to be vulnerable, he said, his voice dripping with bitter irony. So I did. I got out of the car. I walked into that building. I found her name on the directory. Apartment 3B. I went up. He stood outside the door. His hand trembled. But he didn't have to knock. The door opened. A young man stood there. Someone Daniel had never seen before. Early 20s. Messy hair. Tattoos. His easy smile vanished the moment he saw Daniel's face. And then, over the young man's shoulder, Daniel saw her. Leah. She was rising from a couch, her face a mask of pure shock. The guy looked confused, Daniel recounted, his voice cold and detached. He said, "Can I help you?" And then Leah appeared behind him. She just whispered my name. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" He looked at her. He looked at the young man, who was now shirtless. He looked back at her. The scene snapped into perfect, horrifying focus. The wine glasses. The dim lighting. Her slightly disheveled look. "I was coming back from therapy," he said, his voice flat. "Dr. Evans convinced me to try talking to you. I wanted to surprise you. To try and rebuild." He gestured vaguely into the apartment. "Who is this?" "Leah." Daniel let out a bitter laugh that was more like a sob. "I'm the husband," he said to the young man, the words tasting like poison, "or the ex-husband, or whatever the hell I am now." He would never forget the look on Leah's face. Panic. Guilt. "Daniel, let me explain," she pleaded. "Explain what?" He shot back, his voice finally breaking. "That you're sleeping with another man, while I'm in therapy by myself, trying to be a better husband for you." "We're separated," she cried. "You left the house." "Separated? I left because you told me you regretted marrying me. I left because I needed time to process that. But I was still wearing my wedding ring, Leah." He held up his left hand. "I still thought I was your husband. I still thought we could fix this." He looked at her hand. It was bare. "It's over now," he said, the words quiet, but absolute. He turned and walked away. He heard her call his name, but he never looked back. That night, seeing her in that apartment, he finally understood. All her complaints, all her threats. In his mind, they were nothing but a smokescreen. A justification for her own betrayal. The aftermath was swift and clinical. Daniel presented the story to his lawyer exactly as he had just told it. He was the wronged husband. The dedicated father. The man who had made one last attempt, only to be met with betrayal. The divorce process was painful, but necessary, he said, his voice now calm and resolved. "My lawyer advised me to seek primary custody of Sophie. I didn't do it out of revenge. I did it out of protection." He carefully constructed his reasoning. "How could I let my daughter be raised in that environment?" Leah was unstable. She was making reckless decisions. A child needs stability. A child needs a parent who puts them first. I had to be that parent. The court agreed. The affair was powerful evidence. Daniel was granted primary custody. The house in Crestwood went to him. Leah moved into a small apartment across town. Daniel described his new life with a sense of quiet order. He was a single father. His sister, Rachel, moved in to help. Their lives revolved around Sophie. "I see Leah during the drop-offs," he said. "The conversations are short. Polite. We only talk about Sophie. There's nothing else to say. Her friends. I hear they look at her differently now. My family. Of course. They know the truth. They know who destroyed our family." He leaned back, the sound of the chair creaking slightly. He was at the end of his story. "People can say what they want," he concluded, his voice a low, steady murmur. "They can say I was absent. They can say I was a workaholic. Maybe I did work too much. But everything I did for them. I built a home. I provided a life. And when our marriage was on the brink, I was the one who went to therapy. I was the one who was willing to try again, even after she said the cruelest thing a person can say to their spouse. He paused, gathering his final thoughts. The ultimate justification. I went to her that night, with an open heart, ready to rebuild everything from the ashes. And I found her in someone else's arms. She's the one who held the match. She's the one who burned it all to the ground. He fell silent for a long time. The only sound was the soft hum of the recording device. I didn't destroy our marriage. He took a breath. I saved my daughter from it. And that is the only truth that matters. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next.